Welcome to the Divorce Podcast, where we explore all aspects of ending relationships, separation, and parenting apart. If your marriage or partnership has ended, or you have friends and family who are separating, then this podcast is for you. I'm Kate Daly, a relationship counsellor, divorce specialist, and co-founder of Amicable, the online legal service for separating couples. In each episode, we look at relationships and separation from different angles, including the emotional, legal, and social. I'm joined by experts and special guests who share their own stories, experience, and tips, with the goal of helping people end relationships in a kinder and better way. This week, I'm delighted to be joined by Anthony Siver, divorce and co-parenting specialist at Amicable, Shakira Paulus, marketing consultant at Restored Lives, and Helen Pittard, a family relationship specialist and one of the founder trustees of Voices in the Middle. We're going to talk about our latest tool created by Amicable in collaboration with Restored Lives, Split Happens. Tune in to find out how it can help young people of separated parents process their emotions and feel confident moving forward. Just a quick heads up before we begin. This episode covers content that some listeners might find distressing, including poor mental health and suicide. If you loved this episode, then please subscribe and rate us on your preferred listening platform. Welcome to you all.
Thank you so much. So happy to be
Thanks,
here.
Kate.
It's lovely to see you all, and we've got quite a crowd today to talk about Split Happens, which I'm excited to do. We're going to explore this new resource that we've collaborated with Your Direction, Split Happens, and specifically the chatbot we've created, Yuni. But before we dive into what it is and how it can help young people, I'm going to start by just getting you all just to tell me a little bit about this landscape, particularly how there's a gap in resources for particularly teens and young people when their parents divorce. So Anthony, I'm going to come to you first. So you're a divorce specialist with Amicable, but you have personal experience of divorce and separation as well. So from your perspective, both professionally and personally, tell us a little bit about the gap that exists if your parents are divorcing.
Yeah, thanks, Kate. I think that there is a bit of a gap in terms of support and resources that are available for younger people who aren't really young children. I think for really young children, there's lots of really good resources, storybooks and things like that. But over the age of around sort of 6 or 7, that's where the gap can start to show. My experience personally was from my parents separating when I was younger. I was around about 5 or 6 at the time, and obviously that was a while ago now, so there was nothing like Split Happens back then. But it's certainly something that I think is really going to help to bridge that gap and be a lot more available and accessible for young people on the devices that they're using.
Yeah, so meeting them where they are. And Helen, from your perspective, so you were a trustee of Voices in the Middle. What was that and what's the gap that's left?
Well, Voices in the Middle originated and was born from the experience of a young person who sadly took their own life whilst their parents were separating because she was struggling so much. And the founder realized at that point there was absolutely no dedicated support for children and young people who were experiencing this massive transition in their lives. The charity Voices in the Middle was set up to provide online support, but being a charity, it was subject and dependent to funding. And sadly, with the onset of COVID, resources had to go elsewhere, and there was very little funding for charitable organisations such as Voices in the Middle. So the online presence remained, but was not updated. And lots of consultations through professional organisations, government organisations, identifying a need for a resource of this nature, but without backing that up with any funding. So there is, or has been, until Split Happens, a big void in this area.
Right. So there was obviously a need. Somebody came in to fill that need, but that hasn't been able to be sustainable. So I suppose enter stage left, Shakira and Your Direction. So tell us, Shakira, what do Your Direction do in this space?
So Your Direction was set up as part of the charity Restored Lives. So it's basically a free 5-session workshop for young people whose parents have split. What makes it different is that it's kind of built on peer-to-peer connection support. So the workshops run in a way that young people are able to share their stories. And for a lot of these people, this is the first time they've ever had the space to do that in a safe and judgment-free way. What's amazing is that we see the young people who finish the workshops, they say that they feel better, their well-being improves, they've got better and healthier relationships with their parents, which I think is a really powerful thing. But also they leave with so much community and a sense of, I am resilient as a result of my parents' separation. I'm not a statistic. I'm strong and I'm adaptable and I have so much power and I have a voice. And we hear from so many of these young people that, they wish something like Your Direction, something like Split Happens had been there when they were going through kind of the toughest parts. So we've definitely seen a huge gap in this area. And yeah, so excited what Split Happens is doing.
So tell us about Split Happens. So it sounds like in the past, there have been various charitable people in this space providing some kind of support for young people, but it feels like it either hasn't been sustained or, in the case of Your Direction, it's small, it's geographically located. So what is Split Happens and how does it fill a gap that's out there at the moment, Shakira?
So Split Happens is really amazing because it really is that centralized, dedicated space and support for young people. Whereas basically there's so many great resources out there, but it's so inaccessible to young people to access. So Split Happens collates this and it's an AI-powered space. And at the heart of it is Yuni, which is an AI guide, which basically answers young people's questions in relation to their parent split. It's powered by real life stories from young people. We did over 30 interviews with young people who spoke about not only how they navigated their experiences, but how they rose above and thrived as a result. So it's a really positive, hopeful space. There's, definitely nothing like it at the moment. So, yeah.
Okay. And Anthony, you mentioned at the beginning that obviously this didn't exist when you were going through this with your parents. What difference would it have made if you'd had a safe online space?
I think it would have been really useful to have somewhere to go to ask questions where sometimes there aren't always those people around. But I think as well, sometimes young people find themselves asking anyone those questions and they may not be the right people. It may not be, a suitable place. I mean, one of those core memories of mine that always haunts me in the middle of the night is when I was quite young and going through this, I must have been telling everyone at school, all my classmates about it and sharing all these pieces of information that when appropriate to be sharing. Like I remember a teacher saying to me, "Oh, Anthony, not now's not the time for that." So I suppose tools like this can put young people in the right direction for somewhere that they can ask those questions and get good quality answers as well.
Yeah, and I guess, Helen, it's the quality of the material that makes the difference, isn't it? So what's different about this versus just Googling or going on to ChatGPT or any of the other large language models to get answers?
I think the difficulty at the moment with the other resources, which is Shakira said, there's some fantastic resources out there. They're not bespoke. They're not dedicated to this soul arena, which is quite unique when families separate. It's a life event and it's a massive change. And young people, like adults, are all different and unique in their own ways. Some will talk about it to anybody and everybody. Anthony, you're an example of that. Some don't. Some are quite affected, become introvert, and don't necessarily want to talk about it, but need a safe space where they can reach out, that's a protected platform where they will have answers that are effectively written in their language, because young people tend to speak differently to adults with different meanings. So it's their language in a manner that they will understand and equally be able to signpost them to safe material that gives them answers to their questions, but also information that they need as to how they can navigate their way through these changes, but equally their parents, because parents are often lost at this time also. It's a very difficult time for everybody.
Well, I think the thing is as well, isn't it, that it's a bit cringe asking your parents some of this stuff anyway, and because you're worried that you don't want to upset them, that just the very act of asking the question might give a meaning to one or other parent that you're not intending. It feels like it's a bit of a knife edge. So the idea that you've got somewhere that, like you say, is safe, and I'll come back to this notion of safe, but it's safe and I guess impartial is quite a big draw, isn't it, Shakira?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's like Helen said, I think it's really hard. I think when young people are going through this tough time, they don't always have the language to articulate what they're feeling. And oftentimes your parent is the last place you want to go, or even your friends, because it feels quite wrapped in shame, which it absolutely isn't. And that's why I think Uni is so powerful, because it's being powered and built on real life stories from young people. So it can pull up and trace these stories and help them feel less alone, because it's a very isolating experience. But then to hear someone in their own words explain how they navigated and what was tough, and how they moved forward is brilliant. And I think the signposting to further help is also a great thing that Uni does. It's a lot of information out there online. So it is really a unique space where a young person can come on, feel confident enough to try different questions, and the Uni really meets the young person where they're at, which I think is fantastic.
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? It's trying to find ways of reaching teens and young people, exactly as you say, where they're at, because the bot, my understanding, or the Split Happens site is aimed at 13 to 30-year-olds. And I guess one of the key things for that younger demographic there is all around the safety. So, Anthony, why is this better than searching the internet or asking ChatGPT, which I know a lot of people are turning to now? Why is Uni and Split Happens a better starting point?
I suppose exactly for the reasons that we've been discussing, because it's been purposely built for these discussions, for these types of questions, in a way that ChatGPT or any other sort of wider AI resource hasn't been. There's not those protective measures in place. You see the news articles about people that have been led down the wrong path with those discussions, and it's because there aren't those security measures in place. The same thought hasn't gone into it, is the case with Split Happens.
So this is a curated, protected set of material that the bot is learning from. It's not open source. It's not scouring the internet for any old answer. It's actually using material that we've gathered and that Shakira was talking about earlier.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I completely understand why parents and maybe other professionals as well may have some hesitation or some, initial thoughts around whether it is appropriate and appropriate for children and young people to be using these resources. But I think that's ignoring the fact that they already are. They're already using ChatGPT. They're already, asking questions via the internet in a million different ways. So this is making sure that they're doing that in a safe and a protected way. Pretending that the alternatives doesn't exist is sort of defeating half of the point of why this is so useful.
And Helen, I guess you work with separating parents all of the time. What would you be saying to them about the benefits of them allowing their kids to access this kind of material and to use Uni and Split Happens as a resource during their divorce or separation?
That's probably an easy question, Kate, for me to answer, having been involved with working with families for decades now, and having worked with the children and young people and seeing firsthand the experience and the impact the separation and conflict can have on them. There is a need for independent, dedicated support in a way that parents can't provide. They will often say, well, the kids are okay. They don't talk about it. And therefore, you will question, well, why do you think they don't talk about it? Is that a bit strange? Is that normal for them? And I'll very much draw from research on how children can react, can behave. Research that has been consistent for decades. It's research that's been drawn from 80s, 90s, millennium and onwards that repeatedly says the impact that separation has on children. Even if children and young people seem to be okay, it's a change, and change impacts on us all. So even if mum and dad think their children are okay, then often mum and dad will want to be able to give their children resources and safe resources that they can access if they want. So it doesn't mean that they have to, but it gives them tools that can be offered to their children in case they need them. And equally, it gives the opportunity to open a conversation with their children that otherwise they may feel difficult to flag up with them. So it's a conversation that could be started with them, but equally providing them with a resource they can access either together or independently on their own when they're in a little safe space in their rooms.
I mean, it's so hard for parents, isn't it? Because, I think back to when I was getting divorced, you're already having your life picked over on your finances at least, aren't you? And you're bearing all to everybody about exactly where your money is, what it looks like. I guess when a professional then says, oh, and what about the children? The last thing you want to do is go down another sort of exposing alleyway of bearing all around your family life. But this feels like quite a safe way to sort of do that. Anthony, with the people that, you help, do you see that as a way of opening up a conversation about children? Because as Helen says, it's very tempting as a parent to say, no, they're fine. They're not, they're not in any immediate distress. They're not talking about it. They're not sort of acting out in any way. So you can sort of close that door on it. But does this give a safer way of opening up that conversation, perhaps?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it will be really useful for that purpose. I like what you were saying before, Helen, around it being a tool that parents can use with young people together as well, because I think sometimes, we forget that these parents are going through this for the first time themselves. They don't necessarily have the answers either. And a lot of the questions that the children are asking sometimes are the same questions that the parents want to know as well. And we do the separating with children sessions at Amicable. And often those sessions are focusing on, we're about to tell our children that we're separating. How do we have that conversation? What sorts of things are they likely to ask us? And what should we answer? So I think by having a tool like this, it's really useful for them to start that conversation, even in a way that they're using it separately, but the parent might say to the child, or the young person, oh, I was on Split Habits today and I asked this question. Have you been asking it anything? Is there anything that you've learned that you can share with me? So yeah, anything I think to start opening up and beginning that conversation is never going to be a bad thing.
Well, I guess the thing is, as parents, I mean, you're talking about the sessions that we do there at Amicable, where we're often coaching parents through, and I'm sure you probably do something similar, Helen, where you're literally coaching parents through that conversation about telling your kids or your teens or whatever that you're going through a divorce. And we have this assumption baked into the way the world has worked up to this point that our kids will ask us stuff because we know more. And actually, the world's flipped on its head in recent years, hasn't it? Where we don't know, we know less than the internet, and therefore they go elsewhere. So that whole idea that people come to us and we have to coach the adults with all the answers seems kind of like, okay, that's old world stuff. But actually, what we're saying here is this is a tool that you can feel confident in as a parent, that you may not be in the direct firing line for those questions, but there is a parental loco there where you have got somebody who you can ask. Body's probably the wrong word. You've got something that you can ask that's going to give a tailored, specific answer that's safe and kind and helpful rather than just whatever the random dark web wants to throw up. I guess, Shakira, the other thing I was thinking as well is this doesn't replace human support, right? You still have your courses. There's still the importance of human to human contact. So what space does this fill?
So the really important thing to understand about Yuni is that it does not replace human connection and interaction. It encourages it. And Yuni really acts as a real life bridge to real world conversations. So by opening up that gateway, because basically, as we've discussed, there's so much silence surrounding this issue, and it really affects kind of every facet of a young person's life. Even when they're in their 30s and 40s, the ongoing effects can still be felt and seen. So uni allows young people to access and be curious and find that language and feel safe enough to go those places. Yes, it might stir up conversations at home, and that might be a bit uncomfortable for parents, but actually that's where the real change happens, is when we start destigmatizing a parental separation and really allow young people to maneuver the conversation in a way they can ask, what do I need, and what would my life look like ideally, and what does that conversation look like? And again, uni signposts other amazing, great resources as well. So again, it's always about who are the trusted people in your life, whether that be a friend, a counsellor, a teacher. Uni is always encouraging you to reach out to those people. So that's what makes it really special and very centered in human support.
I love that. And you just used the trusted word, which makes me mindful. The government announced its youth strategy, and that's all about finding trusted adults other than parents, and making sure that over the next 10 years that, the majority of Britain's teenagers have a trusted person that they can relate to and speak to. I guess one of the ambitions for this, for Split Happens and Uni, is to make sure that people know about it, so that uni can go into youth clubs, it can go into family hubs, it can be used by the NHS, and that it has a platform across lots of different government agencies and services where it can reach the widest possible audience. Helen, how do we do something like that, and how do we have that big ambition?
Well, really interesting. I was visiting a school yesterday and I was talking to them about obviously children and the voice of the child and promoting the voice of the child. And they were explaining to me how they are often the first port of call for supporting children when parents are separating, because the parents are often so lost themselves or in conflict that the young person is in the middle of that or being weaponized. And they are supporting them, but they don't have a complete knowledge of everything in this arena, and how helpful a resource of this nature would be, so that they could sit with their students and work through any questions or any issues. And to such an extent that they said, we're actually building what we're calling a support bungalow. And we could have a dedicated space with a computer, a PC, a laptop, whatever device, so that if there were young people who were even concerned about parents accessing the history as to what they've been accessing, they could search and access materials of this nature. Split Happens, so that they could access this support. So that's just one example. The education sector, any professional organization who come into contact with children can help provide an outlet, an avenue of knowledge that could raise awareness and be able to access Split Happens. Huge arena.
Yeah, massive. School is often a safe space for teens and young people, isn't it? Where they can, they don't have the pressure of home. So yeah, you're right. If there are terminals and things they can access, and I guess phones as well. And if you're an older teen, your parents possibly aren't monitoring your phone so much, that's not so difficult. But where there are younger teens and they are worried about that kind of thing, then a place. But it feels like, to take your point, Shakira, again, you need people who understand the material, because inevitably questions will come up. Uni can answer an amazing array of questions, but there might be things you want to just chew the fat over with another trusted adult. So making sure that we've got adults as well who are in the lives of young people and teens who can navigate these conversations, that feels equally important.
Absolutely. And I think it's unfortunate that, these streams of support haven't been made accessible maybe up until this point. I know I've spoken to so many young people who've said, gosh, I turned to Google and I didn't really find anything. And I asked, what do I do now? That kind of thing. So I think the fact that there's a place that they can trust to be that gateway to have these conversations with their parents, even if they might be a bit tough, is really, really significant. And I think, yeah, it's a very strange era we're in of tech and social media. And it's quite scary, I think. And we're seeing, lots of things online. So it's a centralized, dedicated space where they know that they can come to judgment free and hopefully have healthier relationships as a result.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it, Anthony? We've got the Australian government at the moment to have just banned social media for under 16s. They don't want to say banned, do they? Postponed social media till you've reached the age of 16. It feels like everything at the moment, a very polarized debate. But this feels like it's bridging a gap. And it's not tech's going to solve everything. It's not tech is completely heinous and bad. But it feels like it's a pragmatic approach to meeting teens and young people where they are, whilst putting in those protective guardrails. How do you see it?
Yeah, exactly like that. I think it's about acknowledging that the tech's not going anywhere, that young people are going to be using this. So it's better to have a resource there where they are, like we've been saying throughout this, meeting young people where they are. But also, I think often young people who are those older children, the sort of older teens and a bit beyond as well, are quite often overlooked with this because they've got that greater level of awareness about what's happening. And sometimes they could be mistaken for a deeper level of understanding around really complex human relationships, adult relationships. One doesn't always equal the other. And I think it's really important to re-emphasize that this is a tool for not just young children, but up to, I think you were saying 13 to 30, because it is those older children as well that will have questions and that may not even be living at home anymore. They may be away at university. And if their parents are separating because they were choosing to wait until they'd finished secondary school to do so, which we know is quite a common occurrence, those children are still going to have questions. They're still going to have a lot of emotions. There's still a lot of change happening in their lives. So having something that's accessible to them and accessible on a device that they're going to be using anyway, where they're going to be turning to be asking those questions anyway, because let's be honest, 18, 19-year-olds, they're probably not going to be asking mum and dad. They may not want to talk to their friends. They're probably going to look online. So I think it's really, really useful and valuable for that.
I think that's the bit as a crusty old lady you don't perhaps realise as much, isn't it? It's just that's what people do. They don't ask other humans anymore. That's the first port of call, is to look it up on YouTube or TikTok or whatever. And I think if we can meet people where they are, like you say, that's important. But I liked your point that there are other complexities. This is not just about, as often the debate is framed, whose house am I going to live at, or how much time am I going to spend with mum or dad? This is about, what does this do to my understanding of relationships? How do I go off into the world and form relationships, having, witnessed what's happened in my parents' relationship for good or for bad? And so I think it's that more nuanced question that I think is particularly exciting in terms of the space that Yuni operates in, because it's talking about way more nuanced discussions around what we mean by love, what we mean by a relationship, and trying to get to a point where older young adults can actually consider what they want from a relationship and what they might be bringing into a relationship as a consequence of their childhood. Because we all do that, don't we? Whether our parents are divorced or together, we take what we've learned in our family setting and we shove it into our relationships. And the more awareness we have of that, the more likely we are to be able to successfully navigate those relationships.
It's also a really useful resource for those ongoing conversations, because it's not even that this needs to be used when separation is recent. As I was saying before, my parents separated when I was very young, but as you get older, you're asking the same questions in a different way with your new understanding of what the world is. So even when you're 18, even when you're 24, you're rethinking things with that new context of adulthood. And it's a great resource to use for that as well, even if the separation was many, many years ago.
And as you said, Kate, it is about changing this narrative, because we will work with adults who were children of a separated family who will specifically state, I don't want my children to feel and experience what I felt. So they will want to deal with it very differently, but equally explaining to the parents that they were their emotions. And it's always important to remember that children and young people have their own emotions too that may look and feel very different to the parents, and to make sure that they are dealing with their children and the young people around them personally and not from their own experience. And Split Happens can help change that narrative for the future.
Brilliant. Final tips, Shakira, let me come to you first. How can parents and young people find the platform?
Yeah, so if you go into Google, type in Split Happens, you can visit the website splithappens.co.uk. Our socials are at Split Happens Official. So it's very accessible to find it. And once you do, it's just engage with it, interact with it, see where it can support you. And if you can share it on, we've got bits on how you can help a friend as well. So even if you don't think it might be relevant to you, there's an amazing resource on Split Happens that can help you support someone going through their parents' split. So we really encourage you to share these links around and interact with it.
Fantastic. Thank you. Anthony, what would you say to anybody listening who is a parent of an older teen or young person who is thinking about recommending Split Happens?
Yeah, I would say, well, mainly just give it a go. Have a look at it yourself, first of all. Have a go on it yourself, asking a few questions. Have a conversation with your child about it, or like Shakira was saying, if your child's got a friend who's going through something similar, mentioning it to them as well. But I think it's being open to the idea of using this technology and experimenting with it, and yeah, just having a go.
Well, knowing it's a safe experiment, that seems to be the key message that's come from this. And Helen, finally from you, what about if you're a professional listening, or a teacher, or somebody that works with young people?
Again, I think it's one of those where it's try this, have the experience yourself so that you can then recommend this to the young people that you are coming across, or the parents, so that you have the confidence if they're in the product. Split Happens is a fantastic tool, a fantastic resource, not taking away that human element. And therefore, if you can access this and use it yourself, you can then promote it also positively.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, all three of you. As the guy said, you can learn more about Split Happens on our website, splithappens.co.uk. If you're looking for separation and co-parenting support, you can visit amicable.co.uk, where you can explore our resources, or you can book a free advice consultation. You can also find me on LinkedIn if you have any ideas for new podcasts, or you want to learn more about what we do on the podcast. And you can find us at thedivorcepodcast.com, or on your favourite listening platform. Don't forget, we'd love to know how we can help you further. So please share questions or topics on separation or co-parenting with us at hello@amicable.co.uk. Thank you all three. It's been an absolute pleasure listening to the progress on Split Happens. It's a great initiative to be involved with. Thank you so much for joining me today to share all the updates. And thank you, everybody, for listening.